On the night of October 12, 1984, in Dallas, Texas, Angela Samota, a 20-year-old college student, mysteriously disappeared after a broken, puzzling midnight phone call with her boyfriend. Just a few hours later, her body was found on her bed, in a strange position and with severe injuries. Right after committing the crime, the perpetrator quickly fled the scene, leaving behind the painful mystery of the young woman's death. For 22 years, the case remained unsolved until one of the victim's friends decided to investigate on her own to bring justice for her lost friend. You are watching a true crime case filled with dark, unexpected, and breathtaking twists until the very last moment. Hit like and subscribe to help us uncover the truth and reopen the Angela Samota case. In the early morning of October 13, 1984, a shocking incident occurred at an apartment complex near Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, involving the mysterious disappearance and suspected murder of a young female student. The victim was Angela Marie Samota, 20 years old, a computer and electrical engineering student, affectionately called Angie by her close friends. She lived alone in an apartment just a few minutes' drive from campus. Around 1:45 a.m. on October 13, Angela left her boyfriend Ben McCall's house after a brief conversation. Before that, she had dropped her friends off safely after a gathering. After leaving Ben's place, she returned to her own apartment. At 1:52 a.m., Ben received a phone call from Angela. Her voice sounded tense and uneasy. She began with a short, urgent sentence, "Talk to me." Angela said she had just let a strange man into her home. He knocked, asking to use the phone and the restroom. During the call, she hesitantly asked, "Is there a payphone nearby?" The question was believed to be a subtle way to get the man to leave without raising suspicion. On the other end, Ben heard footsteps, a door opening, and then a long silence. Before the call ended, Angela added one more sentence, "The bathroom is at the end of the hallway." Then the call was cut. That was the last time she made contact. At 1:58 a.m., Angela promised to call back, but minutes passed in silence. Shortly after, Ben tried calling several times, only hearing the phone ring from the kitchen area of the apartment with no answer. Around 2:10 a.m., filled with worry, Ben went to her place. Angela's car was still parked in front, a sign she hadn't left home. He knocked repeatedly, but no one answered. At 2:17 a.m., Ben officially called Dallas police to report that his girlfriend might be in danger inside her apartment. About 20 minutes later, police arrived at the scene. The landlord was called to provide a spare key, avoiding the need to break the lock. The apartment appeared tidy inside. There were no signs of forced entry and nothing seemed out of place. Everything seemed completely normal. Until they entered the bedroom. On the bed, Angela Samota's body lay motionless, showing many signs that she had fought back fiercely. In her still open eyes, there seemed to be something left unsaid. Initial autopsy revealed severe injuries to the victim's chest, some of which directly affected internal organs. One vital internal organ had been displaced from its normal position. This finding led investigators to suspect the case might involve psychological elements, personal obsession, or symbolic meaning, not just a simple murder. Based on body temperature and early signs of decomposition, forensic experts estimated the time of death to be about 15 minutes after Angela's last call with Ben. Just before 2 a.m., outside the bedroom, police found traces of bodily fluids in the kitchen and bathroom areas. This indicated the perpetrator may have moved around the apartment and tried to clean up before fleeing. At the scene, a sharp object was found missing from the kitchen area. The shower curtain showed stains suspected to be blood. Additionally, some marks on the victim's body suggested possible sexual assault before or after the time of death. However, investigators said they needed to wait for complete forensic results to determine the exact cause of death and time of attack. Notably, a partial but structurally clear fingerprint was found on the bedroom light switch, considered a crucial lead to track down the suspect. Around 3 a.m. that same night, Ben McCall, Angela's boyfriend and the first person to discover her body, was brought to the Dallas Police Department for questioning. In the interrogation room, Ben recounted in detail Angela's final call. during which she mentioned a strange man asking to come in to use the phone and bathroom. However, the detail about a strange man asking to enter late at night raised suspicions among investigators. Investigators began to form theories. Either Angela was too trusting, or there was something off in Ben's account. They didn't rule out the possibility that this detail had been fabricated to mislead the investigation. Ben was quickly placed at the top of the suspect list. He was interrogated continuously for more than 8 hours. However, forensic results found no traces of Ben's blood, DNA, or fingerprints at the scene. He also fully cooperated with the investigation, voluntarily handing over his phone and showing no signs of evasion. In the interrogation room, Ben repeated the details of Angela's final call, mentioning the strange man who asked to enter the house. Although there was no evidence to charge him, police still kept Ben under suspicion. At the same time, investigators expanded the suspect list, reviewing people who had conflicts or special relationships with Angela. According to friends, teachers, and neighbors, Angela was the ideal student: beautiful, smart, friendly, and often chosen as a student representative in charity events. A close friend described her as a triple threat: smart, attractive, and with a personality that made everyone like her. According to friends and family, Angela once dated Lance Johnson during high school. He was described as temperamental, controlling, and often excessively jealous. In one serious argument, Lance not only raised his voice but also issued threats and displayed violent behavior. The incident terrified the young woman. Angela immediately cut off all contact and moved to avoid being harassed. However, Lance showed up multiple times at her new home in a drunken state. He shouted to see her, once even banging on her door for over half an hour in the middle of the night. Another figure who drew investigators' attention was Henry, a fellow student in Angela's class. He was suspected of stalking and having an unhealthy obsession. Henry frequently sent love letters, wrote poems, and invited Angela to his room, despite being repeatedly rejected. When police searched Henry's room, they were stunned. The entire wall was covered in photos of Angela, from group shots at school to stalker-like pictures taken from afar. Alongside were dozens of handwritten letters, love poems, and recorded voice clips of her. The level of obsession chilled the investigators. However, Henry was quickly ruled out as a suspect due to a solid alibi. At the time of the murder, he was attending a group study session with many students and was recorded on library cameras. Forensic results also showed that biological samples from the scene did not match him. Henry was temporarily removed from the suspect list. The third name was Russell Buchanan, a young architect who had met Angela at a mutual friend's party. Calm and polite, he had once expressed interest in her but was turned down. Russell stated that on the night of the crime, he was one of 3 people hanging out with Angela. Around 1 a.m., he dropped her off at home, then returned to his apartment and stayed there all night. However, police were skeptical. Who could confirm he didn't leave the apartment? Was there any camera, witness, or physical trace to verify that? Police searched Russell's home, inspected clothes, shoes, phone records, and even parking log entries. Nothing appeared suspicious. DNA also didn't match samples from the scene. Although Lance, Henry, and Russell all displayed suspicious behavior, none of them could be prosecuted. They either had alibis or were not at the scene. Investigators had no choice but to shift focus, expand surveillance, send samples to independent labs, and request more advanced analysis from the forensic team. However, DNA testing technology in 1984 was not advanced enough to decode all the traces. Many biological clues were suspended due to lack of matching samples. After over a year without breakthroughs, the Angela Samota case was categorized as a cold case, like thousands of other unsolved crimes in Texas. While the victim's family lived in anguish, somewhere out there, the real killer continued to live freely, as if he had never committed a horrifying crime. Nearly 2 decades had passed since that fateful night, and the Angela Samota case, once a citywide shock, was slowly fading from memory. But then, something strange happened. Sheila Wasaki, Angela's best friend and former dorm roommate, suddenly dreamt of her. Angela said nothing. She just stood there, silently looking at Sheila with desperate eyes, as if begging, "Find the truth." That dream haunted Sheila day after day. It felt like a message, a cry for help from beyond. From that point on, Sheila embarked on a mission to seek justice for her friend. For 2 straight years, she made over 785 calls to the Dallas Police Department, pleading to reopen the case. However, all she received were cold rejections. The case is too old, there's nothing more to investigate. Refusing to give up, Sheila turned one bedroom in her house into a personal investigation center. She pinned crime scene photos, connected clues with red strings, and studied the case like a real detective. During that time, she taught herself to read forensic reports, decode crime scene notes, and studied criminal psychology materials. After years of persistence, Sheila was officially licensed as a private investigator in the state of Tennessee. Finally, her tireless efforts were recognized. In 2006, the Dallas Police Department officially agreed to reopen the Angela Samota case. A turning point in the reinvestigation was the testing of preserved DNA samples from the crime scene. The analysis result shocked the entire investigative team. The DNA was a 100% match with a man named Donald Andrew Best Jr. Donald Andrew Best Jr. had a serious criminal record related to sexual assault and violence against women. He had been arrested in 1977 and sentenced to 25 years in prison. However, in 1984, Best was temporarily released on parole for good behavior. Chillingly, the time Best was released coincided exactly with Angela Samota's murder. Not long after, in 1985, Best was arrested again for a similar case and sentenced to life in prison. Throughout his incarceration, he had never been investigated or held accountable for Angela's case. It seemed the case had been buried by time until the DNA evidence was reanalyzed. In 2008, after all evidence was verified, the Dallas police officially charged Donald Andrew Best Jr. with sexual assault and murder related to the 1984 case. In court, Donald Best appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit, with a pale face and an emotionless gaze. Throughout the trial, he never shed a tear or showed any remorse. On the contrary, he calmly described the entire crime with a chillingly cold tone, leaving everyone in the courtroom horrified and enraged. According to testimony and the investigation, on the night of October 12, 1984, Angela Samota returned to her apartment after a night out with friends. Soon after, she heard a knock at the door. The man outside was none other than Donald Best. He claimed his car broke down and asked to use the phone and bathroom. Angela, trusting and unsuspecting, let him in. She didn't know this was just a ploy for him to access her private space. While passing the kitchen, Best quietly took a sharp object from the knife set. He then returned to the room and began questioning Angela about her call with her boyfriend. He wanted to know what she told Ben McCall, why she called him, and whether she mentioned Bess's presence. That was the moment the phone conversation between Angela and Ben was suddenly cut off. After a series of intimidating actions, Angela felt threatened and tried to escape, but it was too late. Best threatened her with the weapon and forced her into the bedroom. It was in that very room that he acted with cold and brutal force. Angela resisted fiercely. Her body bore long scratch marks, nail gouges, and bruises around her neck, evidence of a desperate struggle. At the same time, Ben sensed something was wrong when he couldn't reach Angela. He rushed to her apartment, calling and knocking repeatedly. He had no idea that inside, his girlfriend was being held hostage by Bess. The sudden noise startled Bess. Fearing being caught and sent back to prison, he decided to kill Angela. After the crime, Bess quickly went to the bathroom to wash away evidence, then slipped out through the side door. After a trial with complete evidence and testimony, the jury quickly reached a final verdict. Donald Andrew Best Jr. was sentenced to death under Texas law for committing an especially heinous murder as a repeat offender and showing no remorse. Best was later transferred to the Allen B. Polunsky Unit in West Livingston, Texas, one of the most infamous death row facilities in the U.S. With this verdict, Sheila Wysocki's 25-year journey to seek justice officially came to an end. From an ordinary woman, Sheila taught herself investigation skills, fought persistently, and became the one to bring her best friend's murder case back into the light after nearly 3 decades. Sheila became a symbol of perseverance, honored by many organizations and media outlets for her remarkable contributions to unresolved cases. Angela Samota's family held a simple yet solemn memorial. the first time they truly felt peace after decades of sorrow. The Angela Samota case is not only proof of advances in forensic science, but also a symbol of faith and determination. Justice may come late, but it will never disappear, as long as there are those brave enough to fight for it. This video concludes here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. In March 1994, in the state of Georgia, USA, college student Shannon suddenly disappeared mysteriously. The murderer kidnapped, raped, and burned her alive to satisfy his sick desires and cover up his horrifying crime. It took the police nearly 11 years to uncover the truth. If they had been more responsible, perhaps this tragic event could have been avoided. This is considered the first case in Georgia where the perpetrator was convicted of murder despite the victim's body never being found. The journey to solving this case will reveal many mysteries and dark secrets you've never heard of. Please like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any details of this tragic story. And now, the story begins. Case background. Emory University, where Shannon was a student, is located in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia's capital city. On March 26, 1994, Shannon appeared at the Emory University baseball field as usual. As a scorekeeper, the job not only fulfilled her passion but also supported her family financially. Everything seemed normal until the end of the first inning, when the teams took a break. That was when Shannon suddenly disappeared. People on the field didn't notice anything unusual at first, but when the game resumed without Shannon, concern began to spread. She was always highly responsible at work, and her leaving the game without notice was extremely strange. When the game ended and Shannon still hadn't returned, team members immediately felt something was wrong. A close friend quickly informed the organizers and called Shannon's parents. Shannon's parents immediately contacted the Atlanta police, hoping for their support in finding their daughter. However, the police believed the disappearance wasn't serious and stated that they needed to wait 24 hours before opening an investigation. The police assumed Shannon might have met with friends during the break and gone out, forgetting her responsibilities. But Shannon's close ones felt this was out of character and believed something terrible had happened. On March 27th, Shannon's roommate, while refueling at a gas station near campus, unexpectedly discovered Shannon's black Nissan parked in the station's lot. The unusual presence of the car immediately caught her attention. Initially, she thought the police might be right. Shannon might have gone out with someone, so she waited near the car for her. After waiting a long time and still not seeing Shannon, she entered the convenience store at the gas station to look for her. But there was no trace of Shannon inside. To her surprise, upon returning to check the car, she found the key still in the ignition, suggesting it had been abandoned for a long time. Recognizing the growing suspiciousness of the situation, she immediately contacted Shannon's school and family. The school quickly passed this information to the police, but once again, the police were dismissive, suggesting it was just a non-serious disappearance. The police instructed her to drive Shannon's car back to the campus, saying they would handle it later. However, after the car was brought back to campus, the police took no action. Their indifference left Shannon's family and friends increasingly worried and outraged. On the morning of April 6th at Emory University, Shannon's school received a strange phone call. On the other end of the line was a man. He confidently claimed Shannon was in his custody and assured that she was safe. To prove his statement, he revealed that Shannon was wearing a beautiful ring. The stranger continued, saying he would inform everyone in a few days how they could ransom Shannon. Before the recipient could react or ask further questions, he abruptly hung up, leaving the school in complete shock. The school again reported the incident to the police. This time, the police could no longer ignore the case. The threatening phone call elevated the matter to an entirely new level. An experienced officer named Richard was assigned to work with the telecommunications company to trace the call's location. After analyzing the signal, they determined that the call originated from a public phone booth approximately 30 kilometers from the university. Richard and the investigation team quickly arrived at the scene, hoping to collect fingerprints or any other clues. However, when they arrived, all hopes nearly vanished. Inside the phone booth, they found a small bag carefully placed. Inside the bag was a ring meticulously wrapped with duct tape, exactly as described by the caller. The ring confirmed that the threats from the caller were real. However, the perpetrator seemed to have anticipated the police's actions. No fingerprints or fabric fibers were left at the scene. This was the moment the police truly began their investigation. Richard quickly summoned all the coaches and players who participated in the baseball game on the day Shannon disappeared to the station for questioning. Tension filled the air as they were asked about what happened that day. Unfortunately, most of them claimed they knew nothing about Shannon's whereabouts. However, when asked about suspicious behavior, a few people mentioned the name of the game's chief umpire, Colvin Hinton. These individuals recounted that throughout the game, Colvin frequently glanced at Shannon intently and seized every opportunity to chat with her, even during tense moments in the game. These actions made people feel something was off. When summoned to the police station for questioning, Colvin appeared rather flustered. He admitted to sneaking glances at Shannon a few times because he was attracted to her beauty. Regarding their conversations, he insisted they were merely casual and nothing out of the ordinary. While Colvin's words seemed reasonable, to ensure no clues were overlooked, the police conducted a background check on him. After verification, they found nothing suspicious. Ultimately, Colvin was removed from the list of suspects. This meant the case still had no new leads. At this point, the police had only one option left: to wait for the criminal's promised follow-up call. While the police remained patient, Shannon's family couldn't afford to wait. They began posting missing person notices everywhere, from the campus vicinity to busy streets. Not stopping there, they also offered a $10,000 reward for anyone providing information leading to finding Shannon. While this action was full of hope, it may have inadvertently made the perpetrator feel threatened. It seemed he guessed that the police and family were hunting him, so he decided to go into hiding rather than making the promised call. Time passed, and there was no call from the perpetrator. The case grew increasingly complicated and stalled. The local police realized they lacked the resources and experience to solve the case, so they decided to seek assistance from the FBI. The FBI quickly assigned an experienced agent, Joe Fessa, to Atlanta to assist with the investigation. When he read the case file, his first feeling was anger. He couldn't believe Shannon's disappearance had been handled so sluggishly. Joe remarked that failing to file a report within the first 24 hours was already a major mistake, but waiting 11 days to officially start the investigation was unacceptable. This had cost many opportunities to collect evidence and made the case exponentially harder to solve. Even as a talented FBI agent, Joe felt the pressure. He lamented that with only scattered pieces of information and the ring as the sole lead, solving the case was like searching for a needle in a haystack. This state of stagnation lasted for 6 months until September 1994, when Atlanta police received a peculiar report. A man reported that the bedroom in his house had suddenly caught fire. Fortunately, the fire was discovered in time, so there were no casualties. The man claimed the cause was a faulty vacuum cleaner that short-circuited and caused the fire. He requested an investigation to clarify the cause in order to claim insurance compensation. However, the fire department discovered something unusual. they concluded that it wasn't an accident, but an intentional arson, as traces of an accelerant were found on the bedroom floor. The man quickly drew the attention of the police, as his identity was none other than Colvin Hinton, the umpire previously suspected in Shannon's disappearance. This incident prompted FBI agent Joe Fessa to immediately request a warrant to search Colvin's house. Initially, it was only considered an insurance fraud attempt. However, Joe didn't dismiss the possibility that Colvin could be connected to Shannon's disappearance, given that many leads may have been lost due to earlier investigative delays. While preparing to search Colvin's house, the police dispatched investigators to interview neighbors around the area where Colvin lived. At this point, they gathered crucial information. On the night after Shannon's disappearance, some neighbors saw large flames in Colvin's backyard, as if he were burning something. Colvin had never hosted a barbecue or lit a fire in his backyard before. This raised suspicions about his unusual behavior. The police decided to conduct a thorough search of Colvin's house, hoping to find evidence linked to Shannon's disappearance. They searched every corner, from the main house to the backyard, focusing on areas showing signs of burning. In Colvin's garage, police found several rolls of standard duct tape. Initially, this evidence didn't stand out, but as investigators continued their search in the backyard, they discovered a small burned pit. In the pit, investigators found peculiar items: dozens of small-sized women's sweaters, a medical brace, and a hygiene kit. Notably, they also found a protective suit similar to those used by forensic workers. The dozens of sweaters stood out the most, but after Shannon's family confirmed, none of the items belonged to her. Colvin explained that these belongings might have been buried by the previous house owner, and he claimed no knowledge of them. The police continued analyzing the evidence, but couldn't find direct links between Colvin and Shannon's disappearance. Despite this, he was sentenced to 9 years in 1996 for arson and insurance fraud. 2 years later, in 1998, Shannon's disappearance was officially classified as a cold case due to the lack of viable leads. The victim's family was devastated but never gave up hope of seeking justice, even though they had no way to push the investigation forward. Before returning to FBI headquarters, Special Agent Joe Fessa met with Shannon's parents. He candidly stated that, based on the investigation, Colvin Hinton remained the prime suspect. Among all of Shannon's acquaintances, no one else had clearer motives or opportunities to commit the crime than Colvin. Joe also emphasized that Shannon's disappearance, without leaving any trace, strongly indicated that she had likely been murdered. However, at that time, the lack of evidence prevented further progress in the case. As time passed, Shannon's case gradually faded from public memory. But in 2003, with significant advancements in forensic technology, police departments across the U.S. began revisiting cold cases, including Shannon's. This time, local prosecutor John Petrie in Atlanta decided to prioritize Shannon's case. He contacted the FBI to reassess all evidence and files related to the case. Pieces of evidence such as duct tape, the small fabric bag, and items found in Colvin's house were sent to the most advanced laboratories for analysis using modern technology. Unexpected revelations began to unfold. An observant officer noticed that the bag containing the ring had a unique material. When the fabric bag was sent to the lab, results revealed it was an exclusive type of bag produced by a paper company based in Atlanta. This type of bag was only used by a specific airline, where Colvin Hinton had worked before being investigated for insurance fraud. Representatives from the airline confirmed that these fabric bags were commonly used to store small engine replacement parts. Surprisingly, when police checked Colvin's old work desk, they found multiple similar bags in one of the drawers. Upon comparison, forensic experts confirmed that the bag containing Shannon's ring and the bags from Colvin's desk were identical in material, size, and design. This directly linked Colvin to the evidence found at the scene. Additionally, the duct tape used to wrap the ring was analyzed. Results revealed it contained small metal particles, identified as a tungsten alloy, an alloy specifically used in manufacturing and repairing aircraft engines. Further investigations showed that the airline where Colvin had worked was using this alloy at the time of the crime. The police began to see Colvin's role in Shannon's disappearance more clearly, especially as the connections between him and the evidence became increasingly undeniable. Prosecutors hypothesized that Colvin had arranged to meet Shannon at the baseball field after the first inning. There, he likely subdued her, brought her to his house, and committed a heinous act. To mislead the police, Colvin abandoned Shannon's car at a gas station and used the fabric bag from his workplace to store her ring. He then called the university to report the kidnapping, aiming to extort money or provoke the police. In September 2005, with evidence analyzed using modern technology, Colvin officially faced trial. Although Colvin continuously denied all charges during the trial, the evidence against him was irrefutable. Ultimately, he was sentenced to life in prison for murder after all appeals were dismissed. In July 2006, during a prison visit, Colvin unexpectedly confessed to his father about the entire incident. From there, the full details of the case were revealed. He revealed that on the day of the crime, his initial target was another woman. However, his plan fell apart when she unexpectedly canceled their meeting. Refusing to abandon his plan, Colvin encountered Shannon at the baseball field. As she prepared to leave, he decided to shift his focus to her. On that fateful afternoon, as Shannon sat in the driver's seat, Colvin sneaked into the back seat, pulled out a concealed knife, and overpowered her. Under threat, Shannon was forced to drive to Colvin's house. There, he tied her up, while reassuring her that he only wanted to steal her car and would release her afterward. Colvin then went downstairs to make phone calls to his wife and friends from a landline to create an alibi. While Shannon remained tied up in his house, Colvin drove her car to a gas station near the university, deliberately leaving the keys in the ignition and the doors unlocked, hoping someone would steal it. He believed this would mislead the investigation. After completing his setup, he returned home, untied Shannon, and began his heinous assault on her. That evening, Colvin had plans to attend a movie with his younger sibling's family. Before leaving, he restrained and locked Shannon to ensure she couldn't escape. However, this time, Shannon fought back fiercely. Panicked, Colvin unintentionally strangled her to death. For the next hour and a half, Colvin did nothing but sit on the couch, pacing around the house in a state of shock and confusion. Finally, he decided to move Shannon's body to the backyard, placed it on wooden planks, and set it on fire. The next morning, around 6 a.m., Colvin attempted to erase all traces by cleaning up the ashes. When his wife returned home in the afternoon, she questioned the pile of ashes in the yard. Colvin casually replied that he needed to tidy up the area before the gardener arrived the next day. To complete his cover-up, Colvin packed the remaining parts of Shannon's body into a large bag, drove to a remote ditch, and disposed of it. This plan allowed him to conceal his crime for over a decade, making the case one of Georgia's most perplexing mysteries. More than 10 years later, with advancements in forensic technology, the police finally gathered enough evidence to bring Colvin to trial. This marked the first case in Georgia's history where someone was convicted of murder without a body or complete crime scene. The lengthy trial, fraught with hardship and loss, left a lasting impression. However, bringing the perpetrator to justice provided some solace to Shannon's family, ending their years of grief and waiting. Shannon's name became a symbol of relentless pursuit of justice by her family and community. Her story received widespread media coverage, reminding everyone of the importance of swift action in missing person cases. The case concluded, but the lessons it left behind continued to resonate. the importance of perseverance in investigations, the accountability of law enforcement, and the power of community solidarity in the search for truth. This marks the end of the video. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found it fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated on more captivating stories to come. In December 1984 in Cleveland, Ohio, 14-year-old Gloria Pointer was found dead, her clothes nearly stripped off, and her body severely assaulted. A series of suspects were investigated and many were arrested, but the police were unable to identify the perpetrator. Every theory and every investigative campaign led to dead ends. The case seemed destined to fade into oblivion, but one person never gave up. That person was Yvonne Pointer, the mother of Gloria Pointer. For 30 years, she tirelessly sought the truth, fighting to bring justice for her daughter. Then, nearly 3 decades later, a shocking discovery exposed the identity of the killer. Who was he? What was his true motive? And how did he manage to evade justice for so many years? Don't look away. This terrifying story is just beginning. Hit like and subscribe to follow this haunting case in its entirety. Gloria Pointer, the main character of today's story, was born on February 8, 1970, in Cleveland, Ohio. She grew up in a happy family with her mother, Yvonne Pointer, her stepfather, and her brother. Gloria was not only beautiful, but also an outstanding student. Harry E. Davis Middle School recognized her as one of the most diligent students. Her friends often called her the girl with the radiant smile. She was also a vibrant cheerleader, always present at school sports events. Gloria had big dreams. She wanted to become a journalist, someone who could use words to change lives. Even her teachers had high expectations for her. No one could have imagined that, on one winter morning, all those dreams would be crushed. Cleveland, Ohio, morning of December 6, 1984. That day, heavy snow blanketed the city. Gloria Pointer left her house, filled with excitement, because it was a special day. The day she would receive an award for perfect attendance. That morning, Gloria called her best friend to borrow a new hairbrush for the award ceremony. She planned to stop by her friend's house on the way to school. Coincidentally, while delivering newspapers, Gloria's mother, Yvonne, along with her husband and son, saw her walking toward an alley that the kids called the shortcut, a passage leading to her middle school that ran behind another alley. Yvonne called out to her daughter, asking why she was going that way. Although Gloria heard her mother's voice, she did not change her route. Yvonne didn't think much of it at the time, as her daughter usually walked to school alone. 9:30 a.m., the school principal picked up the phone and called Yvonne. "Mrs. Pointer, Gloria didn't come to school this morning. Do you know where she is?" No one knew that this would be the beginning of a 30-year-long nightmare. Yvonne felt uneasy and quickly called Gloria's closest friends. However, no one had seen her, which was completely out of character. Yvonne immediately contacted the police. 12 p.m. Cleveland police took on the missing persons case. Investigators retraced Gloria's route from home to school, but amidst the thick snow, her footprints had vanished. A 14-year-old girl couldn't just disappear in broad daylight without a trace. Someone had taken her. Investigators immediately visited Harry E. Davis Middle School to gather information. A 9th grade student named Lamar Thomas unexpectedly revealed an important detail. He recalled seeing Gloria walking with someone that morning, close to the school. However, he hadn't paid much attention. He assumed it was just another friend. They turned into the pathway next to a house. Lamar pointed toward a narrow alley between residential buildings. Police marked this as a key location and focused their search there. But at first glance, they found nothing. No signs of struggle, no bloodstains, no evidence of a crime. Tension mounted. Police returned to Gloria's home, searching her bedroom for notes, letters, or a diary that might contain clues about who she had met that morning. But they found nothing useful. They were racing against time. Every missing person case has a golden window. If no clues emerge within the first 48 hours, the chances of finding the victim alive drop significantly. Morning of December 7th, 1984, one day after Gloria's disappearance. The police received a report about a suspicious figure lurking behind an apartment complex near the school. A police team was immediately dispatched. Upon arrival, they followed a narrow alley behind the apartment building. A metal fire escape led down to the basement. At the base of the stairs, a girl's lifeless body lay face down. A backpack and a student ID card were beside her. The card was stained, but the name remained legible: Gloria Pointer. Gloria's face was pale, her eyes wide open, as if she had seen something horrifying in her final moments. Signs of violence were evident on the victim's body. Her clothes were disheveled, and her skirt was lifted higher than normal. No one dared to say it aloud, but everyone knew what had happened before she was murdered. The initial cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation due to neck injuries. Additionally, scratches on Gloria's fingernails indicated that she had fought back until her last breath. The estimated time of death was between 8:15 and 8:45 a.m. on December 6th. This meant that only minutes after turning into the alley, Gloria encountered her killer. In reality, there were many traces left behind by the perpetrator at the crime scene and on the victim's body. However, at that time, DNA testing was not widely available, making it impossible to identify the killer using forensic methods. When the police called Yvonne Pointer to deliver the devastating news, she barely heard the words, "We found Gloria," before collapsing onto the floor. The grieving mother couldn't accept the truth, but had to gather her strength to arrange her daughter's funeral. December 9th, 1984, the funeral of Gloria Pointer. The snow continued to fall silently, and the gray sky seemed to mourn a young girl who was taken too soon. Friends, teachers, and neighbors gathered, but the most heartbroken of all was a mother burying the child she loved the most. Meanwhile, the Cleveland police expanded their investigation. Every house in the surrounding area was knocked on, and every resident was questioned. But the answers were all the same. No one knew anything. No one had heard anything. At this moment, a teacher from Harry E. Wall Davis High School unexpectedly provided a clue. That morning, while driving to school, she had seen Gloria walking with a man wearing heavy clothing. However, the thick snowfall obscured everything in a white haze. She couldn't see the man's face clearly. She couldn't describe his height, build, or any distinguishing features that could help the police identify him. This forced the police to start with the most immediate suspects. They began with Gloria's stepfather, the last person to see her before she left home. But the stepfather had a solid alibi. He had been delivering newspapers at the time of the crime. A newspaper delivery worker follows a set route and schedule, with multiple witnesses able to confirm that he never left his job. Next was Gloria's boyfriend, a fellow student. But upon checking, the police discovered that he had been in class on the morning of December 6th. No evidence, no clear suspects. The police seemed to be at a dead end. The murderer was still out there, and the only clue was a vague silhouette in the snowy mist. Yvonne Pointer, however, began to take notice of a strange man in the neighborhood, a neighbor who often made unsettling comments about women. He wasn't close to her family, but whenever he had the chance, he would try to talk to Gloria in a way that made Yvonne uncomfortable. Immediately, the police were informed about the man's odd behavior. He was summoned for questioning. His voice was eerily calm, showing no worry or fear. Despite his apparent obsession with young women, the police found no evidence linking him to Gloria's case. He had an alibi and was released. But the investigation was far from over. As the police dug deeper into Gloria's case, a chilling truth emerged. 3 other girls, all 14 years old, had been murdered in Cleveland in the preceding months. On the same day that Gloria was killed, another attack occurred at 6:30 p.m. The victim was a young girl who was dragged into an alley and nearly became another victim of a predator. But this girl did what Gloria couldn't. She escaped. Running frantically through the streets, she screamed for help, forcing her attacker to flee. Thanks to her testimony, the police caught a notorious criminal, Rommel Broom. Upon further investigation, they confirmed that on the night of December 6th, he had murdered one of the 14-year-old victims, Trina Middleton. Everything seemed to fit together. But could he have also been the one who killed Gloria? The police believed they had found the culprit. They reopened all files on Rommel Broom, searching for any evidence that could link him to Gloria. But then came the shock. There was no proof connecting Rommel to Gloria's case. His fingerprints didn't match. He had an alibi for the time of the crime. The police had been wrong. Gloria's murderer was still free. And once again, the case fell into limbo. Time passed, but Yvonne Pointer's pain never faded. The image of her daughter lying cold in that abandoned basement haunted her every night. The longer she went without answers, the harder it became to accept reality. She decided to take action. If the police couldn't find her daughter's killer, she would find him herself. And the first person she focused on was Rommel Broom, the man who had almost been falsely accused of Gloria's murder. She wrote letters to Rommel, not just once, but hundreds of times. In each letter, she asked him, "Did you kill my daughter?" She didn't expect a confession, but she knew that in prison, criminals often talk to each other. But Rommel never admitted to anything. He always insisted he wasn't involved. Yet, Yvonne didn't stop there. She continued writing letters to other convicted criminals, murderers, sexual predators, anyone who might have heard something behind bars. But years passed, and she received nothing but silence. Still, she didn't give up. Yvonne turned her pain into action. She became an anti-crime activist, organizing community programs, founding a midnight basketball league in Cleveland to keep kids off the streets and away from trouble. She cared for children who lacked love, children who could have been Gloria if no one had protected them. She shared her daughter's story across the country, constantly reminding people that her daughter's killer was still at large. But she never forgot Gloria's case, continuously pressuring the police, meeting with every new police chief, and demanding they keep investigating. The years passed, and the case file gathered dust. New detectives came and went, but Yvonne remained steadfast. Then, a glimmer of hope appeared. A special unit was created in the district attorney's office, dedicated to solving cold cases. Gloria's case was one of the first to be reopened. DNA technology had advanced more than ever before. For the first time, the police could extract a complete DNA profile from the evidence collected from Gloria's body. They had the killer's trace, a complete DNA sequence. A name was about to be revealed. The police compared this DNA sample with former suspects, those who had been investigated in Gloria's case. But every person who had been questioned, every suspect who had been under suspicion, was not the murderer. In 2013, nearly 30 years after Gloria Pointer was murdered, the Cleveland Police Department decided to enter the unknown killer's DNA profile into Ohio's criminal database. The entire investigation office held their breath as the system ran through hundreds of thousands of records. The result appeared, a name no one had ever considered: Hernandez Warren. Immediately, the police surrounded his residence. As they handcuffed him, they knew that after nearly 3 decades, they had finally come face to face with the real monster. In the interrogation room, Hernandez Warren showed no fear. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, silent in the face of every question. The police placed a stack of documents in front of him, evidence collected from the crime scene, DNA that matched his. He remained wordless until one of the investigators turned over a photograph of Gloria Pointer. His hands trembled slightly. His gaze flickered, then darkened. He lowered his head as if memories were flooding back, pulling him to that winter morning 30 years ago. He confessed to everything, and from there, the horrifying crime was finally uncovered. The morning of December 6, 1984, while Gloria Pointer wandered the streets of Cleveland, she crossed paths with Hernandez Warren. The softness of her flowing hair, the red scarf she wore, those were the things that caught his attention. He didn't know who she was, but that didn't matter. In his mind, a voice whispered, "This girl is perfect." When Gloria turned into the alley, a shortcut to her school, he rushed at her from behind and overpowered her, ignoring her desperate struggle. He then dragged her into the basement of an abandoned apartment building nearby. Gloria fought with all her strength. She kicked, punched, scratched, her nails even tore at his skin, but it only made him more enraged. There, he brutally violated Gloria. After satisfying himself, he initially intended to leave but feared she would report him. So he turned back and murdered her. 30 years later, he sat there facing those who were questioning him. He lowered his head, his voice trembling. "Why did I do it?" he muttered. "I don't know, but I did, and now I can't take it back." Hernandez Warren was arrested immediately after his confession. A case that had lingered unresolved for 30 years had finally found the person responsible. August 15, 2014, the trial officially began. The courtroom was packed, reporters crowded in. No one wanted to miss the moment when justice would finally be served for Gloria. The prosecution presented all the evidence, the DNA samples, the suspect's confession, the 1984 case files. Every chilling detail was recalled in the courtroom, making the air tense and suffocating. The defense attorney tried to plead for a lighter sentence. The defendant claimed he couldn't understand why he did it. He emphasized that he had repented and regretted his actions, but no one believed in the remorse of a man who had mercilessly murdered an innocent child. The jury didn't take long to reach a verdict. Within hours, they unanimously decided, guilty. The judge's gavel struck. The final sentence was declared. Hernandez Warren was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. The courtroom fell silent. A sentence could bring justice, but it could never bring Gloria back. It could never fill the void her family had endured for 3 decades. Yvonne Pointer closed her eyes and took a deep breath. At last, she had fulfilled her promise to her daughter. The murderer had been caught and punished. Justice had been served. She became a symbol, a social activist. She continued organizing child protection programs, giving speeches about Gloria's case to raise public awareness. I chose to stand up and move forward after the tragedy, and in doing so, I became the person I had been searching for. Her words resonated with thousands. The case was closed, but the story of Gloria Pointer would never be forgotten. This video ends here. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so we can bring you more emotional and intriguing stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.